literally thousands of them dying before their eyes as a result of this virus. I think that it very likely could be soon a compensable injury as far as this goes, where generally it's been found not compensable.
What if you get COVID-19 during the course of doing your job? Could you have a workers' comp case? Well, that's what we're going to ask the lawyer today. Hi, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com, and my guest is attorney Sarah Stottlemyer with Stottlemyer Associates in Atlanta. Sarah, thank you for making some time to answer our questions today.
Thank you for having me on today.
Before we get too specific, have you already seen COVID having some effect on workers' comp cases that you already currently have?
We have. Unfortunately, the courts in Georgia have, there's been a mandatory closure until May 14th, which has ended up pushing back a lot of the workers' comp claims that we have, hearings that are scheduled and things of that. Unfortunately, what that does is it takes the pressure off employers and insurers to actually find cases compensable or approve certain medical treatment that may need to be approved. So there's been, with the closure of the courts, some delays that have been happening for a lot of our cases.
Now, are people still able to work with you electronically and that sort of thing?
Oh, yes. We're still here every day. All of the attorneys in my office are working. In fact, a lot of our clients are able to still have telehealth medical appointments, so they're being able to meet with a lot of their doctors and things. But it's been a complete change from what we're used to. So we're doing a lot of Zoom meetings and a lot of things on the phone and video that we would normally be doing in person.
Now let's get to the first question I asked. So if someone doing their job contracts the COVID-19, could that be considered a work-related injury? And is that something that workers' comp could be involved in?
It could. There have been several states already that have done some legislation that have said that first responders and medical personnel, if they contract COVID-19, that will be considered a work-related injury. There is something called an occupational disease statute that a lot of states have, though, unfortunately, which says that an injury would be compensable if the person who contracted the injury on the job were not similarly exposed to it outside of the job. So when you have first responders and medical personnel that are dealing with positive COVID-19 patients every day, and that's the reason why the legislatures have come out and said that they will find those cases compensable. However, if you have, say, a Walmart worker who goes to Walmart every day and his wife stays at home, and so they're not going out into public and being exposed to COVID-19 as much as one of those first responders, if he contracted COVID-19, everything is going to be very fact specific. So it's going to be, if his wife stayed at home only and all he did was go to Walmart back and forth, then we could possibly make the case for it to be compensable. But it is going to be tricky, and it's going to be a whole new area of the law that we're starting to investigate.
And so what is your advice if someone does contract COVID-19 and they suspect they got it while working on their job? What's your advice to them? What should they do?
I would say to document everything thoroughly. You would want to tell your employer immediately if you started to feel ill. You would want to make sure that you're writing down exactly where you've been, because memories get a little bit hazy the further that you get away from it, especially if you're battling a sickness at the same time. In Georgia, you're not entitled to income benefits until you've been out of work longer than a week, and you get that first week, you get paid for that first week after you've been out of work for 21 consecutive days. So COVID-19 cases are not going to be a type of claim that you're generally going to want to bring forth unless you are hospitalized for a number of weeks, or unless you have excessive medical bills dealing with ventilators and hospital stays, or if you're out of work for a couple months due to recovering from the virus. If it's just flu-like symptoms where you recover at home and you're out of work for a week or two, that's not something that you're generally going to want to bring a case against for COVID-19.
And why would that be, Sarah?
Well, because you're not going to be really entitled to many benefits. I mean, medical treatment, in workers' comp, you're entitled to loss of income and medical treatment. So if you are only out of work for a week, you don't get paid for that week because you have to be out of work longer than 7 days. So, and if your medical treatment is relegated to only, prescription medications and over-the-counter drugs, it's not something you're going to want to go through and try and get those benefits, because it's a very lengthy process. And the causation of actually acquiring COVID-19 is going to be difficult to prove. So it would be a lot of work for very little benefit for yourself.
If everything's shut down in my city, state offices, all that sort of stuff, and I guess this applies just in general, not specifically to COVID-19 cases, how do I go about filing for benefits? What do I do?
You would want to call your employer or your HR, either or, as fast as possible if you start to get sick, or if you just suffer a regular work-related injury. There are a lot of essential employees that are still being forced to work. And so if you suffer a work-related injury, you're going to want to notify your employer or HR person immediately, and then they will get in touch with their insurance carrier to start your claim. The things are still open. So doctors' offices, again, they've moved to more telemedicine. The state board is still open for certain things, but they've also gone virtual in a lot of ways. So you will still be able to file a claim, and you will still be able to get benefits. Insurance adjusters are working from home instead of being forced to go into the office. So not everything is completely shut down as a result of this quarantine or the stay-at-home orders. But you just want to make sure you document everything and that you get in touch with your employer immediately as soon as you suffer the work-related injury.
And like you said, I would imagine getting in touch with an attorney like yourself can help you navigate what to do and how to do all this during this strange time.
Oh, it would. Again, if it's a COVID-19 claim, the only claims that our firm is currently handling are ones for medical personnel and first responders. And that's because, while there hasn't been made in Georgia yet, it has been a presumptive carve-out that would be a compensable claim as opposed to an occupational disease issue. But as far as general work-related accidents, it is very important that you get an attorney as fast as possible, especially in this time, because you don't know if your job is secure and if you could possibly lose any sort of benefits by delaying notifying your employer about your work-related injury. You would want to do that as soon as possible, and then you'd want to get in touch with a lawyer so they could help you with your medical treatment.
Sarah, what about people that are basically being forced to work, whether they're first responders, nurses, doctors, EMTs, or even people that have to work at the Walmart, like you mentioned, or either they work or they don't have a job? Has there been thought given to the anxiety caused by that and how that could at some point become compensable?
We are hearing a lot about that lately. I belong on a board of Workers' Injury Law Group, and we've talked about the first responders and PTSD, both for those people that have anxiety of just having to go to work every single day, that they're considered an essential employee, and they're in fear of increased risk of being exposed to COVID-19, or simply you have the medical personnel and first responders that are having to watch thousands of people die that they're caring for in hospitals that obviously would create a PTSD type scenario. In Georgia, you have to have a physical injury that accompanies any sort of psychological injury for that psychological injury to be found compensable. In many other states, though, it just has to be specific to the job. So there has to be a certain incident where it occurs, and then your anxiety levels are, highly elevated, or you start having panic attacks and PTSD. I believe that it's a new area with the COVID-19 issue, especially for our first responders, or say CNAs that are working in nursing homes and things that are watching people that they care for. Right. Literally thousands of them dying before their eyes as a result of this virus. I think that it very likely could be soon a compensable injury as far as this goes, where generally it's been found not compensable without some sort of physical injury to join it.
I got to think not only are those first responders seeing so many people die in front of them, but they're also being forced to work in many cases without adequate protective gear at the same time.
Gear, so. Exactly.
So, Sarah, how do you foresee some sort of changes to the landscape of workers' compensation because of this pandemic that has changed so much in our lives?
I think that there will be increased jobs that allow their employees to work from home, which then you're going to have issues of if you suffer a work-related injury while you're at home. So if you're walking to the kitchen, say, to get a pen or a piece of paper to write down something, and you're on a call and you fall down, or your knee goes out and you fall down a stair or a stoop, that would be a compensable injury, likely. However, if you are going into the kitchen to get a snack, it would likely not be compensable. So I think that it's going to create a whole new area of law as far as fighting over whether or not an injury would be considered what's called idiopathic, as in this could have happened to you just as easily if you would have been down walking in the street. It's not specific to your job duties in any way, shape, or form. So I think that's going to be a new area of the law that's going to get a lot of cases coming out from more employees working from home. And I also think that we're going to see an increase in telehealth or telemedicine, where people will be, on their phones talking with their doctors, and people who have had work-related accidents, when they go in for their once a month medication refill or physical therapy, whatever it is. I think a lot of those appointments are going to be done via their telephone or via Zoom chats on their desktop to prevent the spread until we get any sort of vaccine for COVID-19. I think there are going to be significant changes to the landscape. In addition, I think that the hearings and mediations and things that have typically gone forward in person at the State Board of Workers' Comp in each state, I think a lot of those are going to be moved towards more virtual platforms. So I think it is going to be, unfortunately, a lot of changes. It might make things a lot easier for some people, which would be fantastic, but I do think that some things are going to be more difficult moving forward.
Fascinating information and very timely, Sarah. Thank you for taking some time to answer our questions today.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been attorney Sarah Stottlemyer of Atlanta. If you want the best information or you're ready to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, make sure to go to askthelawyer.com. Also, please take a second to like, share, and subscribe by clicking on the button below. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com.